For this lesson, we're going to be talking about hyperbolas. So if you get your hyperbola graphic out or opened up on your computer, we have a hyperbola that is horizontal, and we have a hyperbola that is vertical. And there's different formulas. So the horizontal hyperbola has the x first in the equation, and then the vertical hyperbola has the y first in the equation. So it's pretty easy to tell which is going to be which. And then we have a formula for c. So we have all these different parts of the hyperbola. So distances that we're going to find. So we're going to find the center the same way. We're going to find A, which is our distance to the vertex from the center. We're going to find C, which is the distance from our center to the focus. And then B gives us a co-vertex, it's called. So it's a vertex, but of the empty space that the hyperbola does not exist at. So we're going to go through and just solve for all of those different parts. So let's take a look at number one. Number one has the x first, which means it's going to look like this. So I'm going to match everything up, and I'm going to start by finding my center. So my center would be a number added or subtracted onto the x and the y. There's nothing. So my center, luckily, which makes it pretty easy to graph, is at 0, 0. Okay, next, I'm going to be finding all the important parts that I need. I need A, I need B, and then I can solve for C. Now, there's nothing under these x's and y's, so I'm going to put a 1 down there, which means if A squared is 1, A would be 1. And if B squared is 1, B would be 1. So I'm going to write those down. A is 1, B is 1. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my formula for finding C. C squared equals A squared plus B squared. So I'm going to solve that. C squared equals 1 squared plus 1 squared. C squared equals 2. C equals the square root of 2. And it's plus or minus, but we're talking about distances. So we're going to have both the positive root 2 and the negative root 2 when we go opposite directions on our hyperbola anyway. Okay, so let's match up all the important parts that we need. So let's start with our vertex. So the vertex is C. So I'm going to find C. C we already know is root 2. So I'm going to map that. Root 2 is 1.4 approximately. We'll plot little points at 1.4 and negative 1.4. There's my vertex. Okay, next, if I look at my formula, so I've got, I think I just marked C. C is the focus, sorry. So A is the vertex. A is 1, so I'm going to mark that off. Let me get a different color, though. There we go. Sorry. So here's our center. 1 is our vertex. 1.4 and negative 1.4 is our focus. And then B is the only thing missing. That's to get our co-vertex. So B is 1 also, so I'm going to mark that off in a different color. Now, one last formula that is not on your formula sheet is the formula for finding the asymptotes. So let's write that at the top here. So the formula would be y equals k plus or minus a over b times x minus h. So that's the formula for the asymptotes. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if we can solve that. So for the asymptotes, y equals k is 0 plus or minus a over b, so 1 over 1, x minus h is 0. So that simplifies down to plus or minus 1x. So I'm going to draw the asymptotes. X is looks like this perfect diagonal here, and negative x goes this way. Okay, so now I'm going to sketch my hyperbola in. You don't have to use your calculator to get extra points because you can use the asymptotes to help guide you. So start at the center. and head toward those asymptotes. It's hard with these ones because they're kind of small, but try to make your hyperbola as rounded as you can. My one on the right isn't looking so good, but the one on the left looks a little better. Okay, so there's our first hyperbola. So let's take a look at number 2. Number 2, the y is first. So I'm going to be using this hyperbola right here. So I'm going to match everything up. So a squared is in the same spot as 1 here. So that means a must be 1. The square root of 1 is 1. B squared is the same spot as 4, so b must be 2. And now I can solve for c. I'm going to use my formula. C squared equals a squared plus b squared. So that would be 1 plus 4. C squared is 5. C is root 5. And one more thing I need is the center. Now there's nothing subtracted from the x and the y, so the center is still going to be 0, 0 for this one. Okay, so I want to plot my center at 0, 0. Okay, so now let's find what we need to graph everything. So starting with, let's do the vertex first. So the vertex is going to be at A. A is 1. So I'm going to plot my vertex at 1 and negative 1. Okay, what's next? We've got C. C is the distance to the focus. So C is root 5, which is about 2.2. And then the co-vertex is B, so the horizontal distance away here is 2. Plot 2 and 2. So last thing we need is the asymptote. So I'm going to write that formula down again here. Y equals k plus or minus a over b, x minus h. So I'm going to plug in. Y equals 0 plus or minus 1/2 x minus 0. So that simplifies to plus or minus 1/2 x. So I'm going to graph both lines. So I'm going to use a different color. I'm going to use orange here. So the first equation is 1/2 x. So I'm going to go up 1 over 2. Plot my first asymptote. And then negative 1/2 x, down 1 over 2. Plot that one. Now I'm ready to graph my parabola. So I'm going to start at the vertex and draw that in. Okay, so let's go to our next one, number 3. So number 3, the y is first. So that's going to be a vertical hyperbola. So a is first. A squared is 25. That means a would be 5. B squared is 81. So b would be 9. I'm going to use my formula first to find c. C squared equals a squared plus b squared. That gives me 106. Okay, that's about 10.3. Okay, so now I think I have pretty much everything. So let's start with the center. Center, nothing added or subtracted. So center is still at 0, 0. A is our vertex. So if A is 5, we're going to plot some points up at 5 and down at negative 5. Our focus is C. C is about 10.3, so that's way up here, way down here. And then the co-vertex is at B, which is at 9. Okay, so let's go ahead and find our asymptote. Okay, plus or minus a over b, x minus h. So that's 0 plus or minus 5/9 x minus 0. So plus or minus 5/9 x. So I'm going to grab my other color and I'm going to do up 5 over 9. Okay, so we're going to start at the vertex. It's going to be a pretty wide hyperbola. Okay, last one. The x is first. So we're going to go back to the horizontal hyperbola. And let's match this up. So a squared is 4. That means a would be 2. And b would be 1. So let's solve for c. My formula for c. C squared equals a squared plus b squared. So c gives me root 5, which again is about 2.2. Okay, so let's go ahead and graph all the important parts. Now, this one does have a center, so let's match this up. H comma K is our center. Now, H here, this is negative H, so this is not a negative, so that means H must be negative 2. Oop, I'm not looking at the right one. I flipped over the wrong way. Sorry, H is first here. So H is the same spot as this one, so it should be positive 1. K, this one is not negative, so that means this has to be negative 2. Okay, so let's plot that center. 1, negative 2. And again, our parabola is going to be a horizontal parabola. Okay, so let's start with our vertex, which is A. So A is 2. That means we're going a distance of 2 from our center. So here's our center. I'm going to go 2 out this way. So everything's symmetrical, and then 2 out this way. That's our vertex. So now let's do our focus. Our focus is going to be C. C is about 2.2. So add a little bit more to that. Remember, that's your distance away from your center, so it should look perfectly symmetrical. And then the co-vertex is B, so B is 1. So I'm going to go up 1 and down 1 from my center. Okay, so now let's do our asymptote. So asymptote formula, K plus or minus A over B, X minus H. So I'm going to plug everything in that I know. Y equals negative 2 plus or minus 2 over 1 X minus 1. So I'm going to simplify this a little bit. Negative 2 plus or minus 2x minus 2. So I've got two equations here. So the first one, if I do the positive, we have negative 2 plus 2x minus 2. And we have negative 2 minus 2x minus 2. So if I simplify this first one, that's just 2x. And this one would be, if I distribute this negative, negative 2x. And then that would be a plus 2. They would cancel. Oh, up here I made a mistake. That should be minus 4. There we go. Okay, so let's start here let's plot this first one here. So we've got negative 4. I'm going to go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. I'm going to draw that first asymptote in. And this one we're going to start at 0. We're going to go down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. So this asymptote is going to look like this. You just graph each of those lines independently. And now we're going to draw in our hyperbola. Start at your center and head toward the asymptotes. Okay, so there's our final hyperbola.